Let's do it. Okay, Jocko. First question from the vault.
And from the vault, I've got a lot of questions.
Got a big vault.
Sure. And so I was just trying to go through and make sure there wasn't any questions or just reviewing questions that might be good that I missed the first time around. So this one right here is from the vault. It's from an old school. It's an old question.
Yeah, one that you always intended to maybe revisit.
Yes.
And here we go revisiting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let the revisit begin.
Started jiu-jitsu thanks to you. Any tips for complementary exercises, especially for non-athletic civilian? What's the hardest stage of your jiu-jitsu journey?
Yeah, and that's actually was two questions. I combined them into one because they're kind of similar. And okay, so jiu-jitsu. One thing that's cool about jiu-jitsu is it's a very well-rounded physical activity, right? You got to have flexibility, you got to have strength, you got to have endurance, you got to be able to recover quickly from fatigue.
Yes.
You got to have some agility, speed, balance, coordination, proprioception. Do you know what proprioception is?
Mm-mm.
It's knowing where your body is in space.
Sure.
It's a talent that gymnasts have very well.
Yes.
Maybe a dancer has very well. They know where their body is in space.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu demands that you know where your body is at all times. So that's the stuff that you need to work on, all those things. Because jiu-jitsu is a unique test of all those things. It's a test of your strength. It's a test of your flexibility. It's a test of your endurance. It's a test of your ability to recover. It's a test of your agility. It's a test of your speed, of your coordination. It's a test of all those things. And so that makes it a really good sport to practice, in my opinion. So what do you need to do? Well, what you need to do to train them is you need to train all those things. So for flexibility, I personally like the mobility WOD. I think that's excellent. But get some kind of stretching protocol, gymnastics types movements. There's gymnastic bodies, which is a ridiculously good protocol you can go on. It's an internet thing, gymnasticsbodies.com.
And what is that, like a workout?
Yeah, it's a workout. Like it's flexibility.
Yeah.
It's hardcore. It's hardcore. Okay. But that's really good. You'll get your flexibility. You get all kinds of stuff from that. But so you got to be flexible. You got to work on your flexibility. So what are you going to do? Like I said, you're going to do mobility water, some kind of stretching protocol so you get limber. You got to work on your strength. So what do you do? Work on strength? Olympic lifting. What is that? Clean and jerk, snatches. That brings in things like cleans by themselves, presses and hang cleans and all that. And then on top of that, for strength, you also have the simple movements, the deadlift, the squat, the front squat, the overhead squat. And also for strength, you can go back to gymnastics again. Mm-hmm. Go back to those gymnastics movements and basic calisthenics. Pull-ups, push-ups, dips, squats, flutter kicks, that whole 9 yards. Now you got to have endurance, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you do for endurance? You can see where this is heading. Mm-hmm. For endurance, what do you got to do? Run, swim, bike, some kind of Metcon. I like the Metcon personally for my cardiovascular endurance and recovery and whatnot. So yes, you can add running and sprinting into those. You can sprint swimming. You can sprint on a bike. You can use kettlebells to work your Metcon scenario. You can actually use barbells to do Metcons. Do a bunch of cleans, and you will get tired. Yep. And then with that, when you work on your endurance, that thereby improves your recovery. And so that's going to help you there. Then you have agility, and for agility, what do? Do some sports, some cross training of sports. I personally like to surf. But, it's not just that. It's basketball. It's go play soccer, go huck a baseball, whatever, so that you work on your agility, Then you get your speed, and I already talked about this. You got your running, your sprinting, the air bike or whatever. The proprioception, the gymnastics, the movement type things where you're holding your body in space. So that's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of stuff. And you pile all that together, and you got a lot of varied activity. And what's nice about that is when people talk about getting burnt out, I'm like, I never get burnt out on working out. Mm-hmm. I got 97 different base exercises that I can use. I'm not going to get burned out. Mm-hmm. So, and what's fun is you jump into these challenges, like, or you find something that's challenging that you can't do, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to see what I can get my weight up to on this. I'm going to see if I can do this movement in gymnastics. I'm going to see if I can do this many pull-ups or whatever. You keep continually varying and heading in a different direction. And I think when you combine all those things together and you become a well-rounded athlete, that is what will help you the most with the jiu-jitsu.
Well,
but I don't think there's one exercise like, hey, this will help you in jiu-jitsu. Although the clean and jerk is pretty good.
Yeah, and anything with like your body weight. So, because like in jiu-jitsu, when you're doing jiu-jitsu, that's mainly what it is. Sure, there are elements where you're trying to control someone else's body weight, but it's mainly what you're doing with your body. So, like when you do, you know, like this when you climb up. Like,
the pegboard.
Yes, yeah, like that kind of stuff. Bars, all the gymnastic stuff. Mm-hmm. And then as far as like being strong in these weird ways, because that's essentially what you're going to be doing in jiu-jitsu, you know? There is
in jiu-jitsu, oftentimes you're moving someone else's weight too.
Yeah.
In guys that are super explosive, that's a different thing to deal with. And it's a good trait to have, to be super explosive.
Yes, for sure. So you combine that with like when you shrimp out someone, right? Yep. Sure, someone's gonna be strong holding you, but when you shrimp, you're pushing your own body weight. That's your own body weight. Sure, you add his own. You're with the guy. That's just kind of part of the game. But if you can control your own body in these stronger ways, that's gonna give like such a big benefit. So, and then to your Olympic lifting, to me, that's, in my opinion, that's probably one of the best ones, Olympic. And this is why. Not only do you get that little explosive movements in there, but when you put Olympic lifting to make up your Metcon, when you do like a clean and press, right? Mm-hmm. Your muscle work is just for a second, and then for a second it's almost kind of relaxed. Mm-hmm. And then boom, again, and then it's kind of relaxed, and then you hold, and boom, and it's just repetitive.
That feels like jiu-jitsu to you.
That's kind of what jiu-jitsu can be, depending on your game.
Yeah, it can be very much that.
Yeah. So, and if you're in shape in that way, where you can go hard, rest for just a little bit, and then go hard again, if you can do that, if you're in that kind of shape, that's gonna help. So when you do a Metcon or circuit training, something like that, where if you can do the exercise, dynamic rest, like active rest, where you're walking or even jogging, kind of, that's what jiu-jitsu is. It's like work, and because you're never really just laying there.
Yeah, no.
Do that kind of thing and do it in like rounds. If you're into like a 10-minute round in jiu-jitsu and that's really your thing, then do your circuit train 10-minute rounds. It'll help. It'll get you kind of aware of like, okay, I'm this tired, I gotta manage, all this stuff. But yeah, I agree. I think Metcon, swimming. Bro, if you do swimming sprints, because it's like your whole body,
Especially the less comfortable you are in the water, the more those swimming things are gonna be challenging for you.
Yeah.
But hey, speaking of Olympic lift, do you know Mo Lawal?
Yeah.
Have you ever trained with him?
No.
So Mo Lawal, if for those of you listening that don't know who Mo is, he's a really incredibly good wrestler. He wrestled in college, and he is he didn't make the Olympic teams, but he was like in second. He almost made the Olympic team, but he's a big guy, so he's like 205 pounds, and I think he is the most explosive person I've ever trained with. And I've trained with some unbelievably incredibly explosive people, and you'll find that if anybody wrestled on a high level, like if they were a high-level college wrestler, there's a likely chance that they're very explosive.
Well, yeah.
They're very explosive.
Very likely, yeah.
And Mo is explosive to a crazy level. But the reason that I thought of it when you said Olympic lifts is one time he was just trying to help me with some takedowns, and the way he was exploding into him, right, and he was all fired up. He's like, it's like when you do a clean and jerk. He goes, this right here is the beginning of it. And you could see that he's developing so much explosiveness. The first time I ever trained with him, Dean, I can never read Dean with when he sets me to train with somebody. Mm-hmm. He doesn't give me a heads up. Like if I were going to tell you, if there was let's say there was a guy that was a really good wrestler, mm-hmm. and I go, hey Echo, train with this guy over here. Hey, he's a really good wrestler. Mm. And if I might even say, hey man, he's a really good wrestler, and he's got a sick guillotine. So you're like thinking about it, right? I'll give you a little heads up. Dean just goes, hey, you should train with him, right? That's what Dean does. And so, anyways, he did tell me on this occasion. He goes, hey, Mo's coming down. You got to train with him. He's a really sick wrestler. And I go, awesome. I think to myself, oh, cool. I actually, for a guy that didn't wrestle in high school, I have decent takedown defense because I've been defending takedowns for a long time. And I utilize jiu-jitsu to defend my takedowns. So I'm sprawling and guillotining and going for commuters. I'm doing active, aggressive jiu-jitsu moves to people when they're trying to take me down. So I'm not trying to say I have any major skills there, but I'm not a slouch to take down. Mm-hmm. So I figured, hey, I got a good wrestler, cool. And he wasn't that experienced in jiu-jitsu, which tells you, okay, cool, right. You're going to guillotine this guy. This isn't, or you at least have a good chance or whatever.
That's what you're thinking,
so,
sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking that. So I meet Mo, and good dude, we're going over some moves, and then it's like time to train. And Dean's like, okay, yeah, you train with him, Jocko. And I go, okay, cool. So, we slap hands, and we're doing and Mo was getting ready for a fight, but we weren't fighting at all. We were just...
And just to kind of put in context, you say Mo's a good wrestler. Mo also happens to be the Bellator 205 champ. Or was he the champ? Or
He wasn't at this time. This was like as he was getting into MMA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was really actually probably sharper at wrestling at this time because he was coming out of, trying to be on the Olympics.
Yeah.
And... yeah, he wrestled. I want to say he wrestled at Oklahoma, but anyways, King Mo is what he's known as. King Mo. And so, anyway, so we slap hands. We're getting ready. We kind of square off, and I'm okay, doing my thing. Boom. He does this takedown to me. His face hits me in the chest. And this is in the less than the blink of an eye. His face hits me in the chest. And his hands, they don't even grab my legs. Mm-hmm. They just tap my legs like a double leg.
Blast double.
And it's a blast double. And I'm in the air. He knocked me into the air with his face.
Bro, that's saying a lot because you're huge.
Yeah, he knocked me into the air with his face. I fall down to the ground. And the funny thing was, I got back up immediately. Like he took me down so fast he couldn't even chase me to the ground because I was back up really quickly. But that was the fastest takedown that I'd felt. That is probably the fastest takedown. Now we have one more guy. There's a guy coming up right now at the gym, another sick wrestler. But he wrestled. He's a really good wrestler, a sick wrestler, collegiate wrestler, and all that. Taylor Johnson. So Taylor is another guy who has mutant strength. He has mutant strength. It's not normal.
Yeah.
I was on Taylor, and I was going for like a guillotine, or I think I was actually going for a crucifix. So for those of you that don't know what this is, Taylor, picture a guy on all fours on the ground, and someone else is trying to rip their head off. Okay, so that's Taylor. He's on all fours on the ground, and I'm trying to guillotine him, rip his head off. With one hand, he goes up to his knees and lifts me into the air and shot puts me through the air onto the ground, and then gets across side. And I started laughing. I'm like, bro, you just shot put me. And he didn't even do it from his hips. Like, he didn't get the strength from his hips. He got it from his upper torso.
Yeah.
He didn't use his legs at all. It was no legs because he was on his knees.
Yep.
And so he just has this massive explosiveness. But then the thing that's really scary about Taylor is that he's adapting. Because just because you're a good wrestler doesn't mean you automatically adapt well to jiu-jitsu. Some people never adapt really well to jiu-jitsu. And you can see, I mean, in MMA, in the UFC, there's plenty of wrestlers that you look at and you go, yeah, that guy never really transitioned into become a comprehensive ground fighter that was as comfortable on his back as he is on cross-side, as he is going for submissions. There's some guys that have been extremely successful that never made that transition, but they stay on top, ground and pound. Taylor, if you watch him roll, you might not even know he was a wrestler until you roll with him, and then you're going to feel that you can't move him. But if you just watch him roll, you'll be like, oh, wow, he's going for, advanced jiu-jitsu moves. And by the way, been training for less than a year.
Yeah, very surprising with him in regards to that. Like, you look at him, if you look at him, you're like, okay, I'm about to roll with this guy, and then you roll with him, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not surprised at this guy's strong. His balance is just like magical balance kind of thing. So when you look at him, on the surface, but if you know that he's such an accomplished wrestler, you would think, given his experience, you'd think, okay, his jiu-jitsu, or even his, like, when he's training his jiu-jitsu, you wouldn't expect it to be that fluid. Like, when I rolled with him, I was like, I thought when you were like, yeah, he's kind of this new guy, you haven't rolled with him, you should roll with him because, he gives good training. He's really good. So what I'm thinking is good, but I'm thinking this is going to be real wrestling intensive. Yeah. Training scenario.
Then he pulled guard on you.
No, he didn't pull guard, but his whole thing. Yeah. He was in the guard.
He doesn't care.
He was like, I'm here to train. I'm here to, get good or whatever, man. And that kind of attitude, it gets you so good. And he wasn't trying to, like, okay, another big guy, let me, like, wrestle this guy. We were doing straight up jiu-jitsu, and it was clean. It was good.
Yeah. But anyways, he's got that super explosiveness too. That's mutant level, and also his striking. Yeah, is ridiculous. And he hasn't been known. He's just a natural athlete because he's been just. Anyways, so that's him, and we got a bunch of other pipe hitters too. I mean, you got Big Andy, who's awesome. Yeah. Justin, don't forget about Justin. Jordan just showed up, so we got some good training in there. Yeah, for sure. But back to this deal. So I was talking to Taylor about, and I go, bro, did you ever, like, Olympic lift? And he goes, yeah, I got into CrossFit for like a month. and that was right before I got into MMA, and I was doing pretty good. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? He's like, oh, I was snatching like 300. I was like, what?
Oh, and they invited me to the CrossFit Games.
He did CrossFit for a month and never snatched before, and all of a sudden he's snatching almost 300 pounds. That's insane. Yeah. So, but that's what it feels like when you roll with somebody that has that kind of explosive strength. It's very, very, it's a very good tool to have. Yeah. Now we could go through the entire list of body types, strengths and weaknesses, because you get the lanky people that are strong and wiry, like Higgs. You rolled with Higgs before, right? No, never. Yeah. Higgs is lanky, wiry, skinny. When he puts a triangle on you, it starts to cut into your body because he's all, Comprido's like that. Comprido's just like the length. Like how can you sweep him when his arm is basing like 8 feet over there is where he's basing. So you get that kind of body. Then you get the real small, like the stocky, people with no limbs sticking out, right? Can't really choke them. Yeah, you can't. It's hard to choke them. So, anyways, we could go through every body style, and each one of them has an advantage. But the thing that's cool about explosiveness is something you can somewhat train, right? You can somewhat train. Now you can't. You're not going to be able to naturally get as explosive as Mo Lawal or as Taylor Johnson, but you can get stronger. Right? You can get stronger. So, but the other thing is, where can you defeat them? Where can you be better than them? Maybe you can be more flexible than them. Maybe you can be faster on a scramble. Maybe you can be heavier and tighter. So there's some athletic things that you could try and improve to overcome and negate some of their advantages. Hard to do. You get some people that are mutants. Yeah. Dean's big and flexible, right? Dean is big and strong. It's shockingly flexible. Glover is so flexible that you have to negate that. And Glover, he loves training with big muscle bound guys.
Yeah.
That's like an easy day for him. That's what he likes to, that's the easiest matchup body style for him, is someone that's just super strong and muscle bound.
Yeah, and you get mutants like, and I'd say that's kind of a good way of putting it, mutant like Taylor, where he has a wrestling background, so he's no stranger to like functioning while he's tired. So I'd say if you're big, explosive, strong, or whatever, typically your endurance is not that good. Typically. So if you get all those factors and they're flexible and stuff, and they have endurance, there's your bad day right there. If this guy has that. So other than that, if you take one or two different attributes, you can always find, it's like rock, paper, scissors. You can always find one that can, if you just employ this strategy, it'll give you more of an advantage.
And because I always like to tie this together to leadership, so it's the same thing with leadership. And because people ask me all the time, are leaders born or made? Or, can you develop a leader? Everybody is born with certain leadership characteristics. It's just like a video game where they rank your strength and your intelligence and your agility and all the stuff that we just talked about. Yep. People have that for their leadership capability as well, right? Are they articulate? Because some people are articulate, and that is a good advantage to have. Can you read people well? Well, that's another thing that some people are naturally good at. Can you simplify things? That's a talent that some people have. Now, you could go on this list, but what you find is that some people are gifted and they have really strong leadership characteristics, leadership traits. Yeah. And that's great. And then you get some people that don't have those. And so what do you got to do? It's the same thing that I have to do in my jiu-jitsu game. How do you develop those things? How do you become more articulate? How do you simplify things? How do you recognize that you are a person that makes things more complex? And how do you focus on making things simplified? So you just go right down the list. So yes, you can be born with some natural leadership characteristics, but if you're not born with them, how do you develop them? It's usually these things aren't that hard to develop either. Yeah. So when you have weaknesses, identify them, be humble enough to identify them, and then see how you can improve upon them. And although they may never become your staple of your game, either as a leader or a jiu-jitsu player or anything else, they can become, it's not something you have to protect. It's not something you have to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, you can kind of function in those little regards now.
Yes, you can become functional.
Yeah.
And for instance, if you're not the most articulate person, well, number one, you can study, you can listen to people speak, you can record yourself speaking, you can video yourself, so you can practice and become more and more articulate. And that means, guess what? I'm not very articulate, so guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to plan more before I go and brief people. Yeah. I'm going to go through exactly what I'm going to say. I might even rehearse it 2 times. Then I'm going to sound articulate. So you're going to make up for those problems. And that's all you have to do is figure out how you can make up, or how you can get rid of, or how you can mitigate some of those weaknesses that you have. The other thing you could do is you surround yourself with somebody that's super articulate. Echo, you're more articulate than me? Cool, I want you to put out the word to the troops. Boom, done. Even though I might be in charge, I'll say, all right, hey, Echo's going to brief this operation, or Echo's going to brief this strategy, and then boom, Mr. Articulate Echo gets up there and does it.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best example, but that's what you do. That's how you want to, that's how you fill in the holes in your leadership game. Yeah. And by the way, you'll never have the ability to do that if you're not humble enough to admit where you have weaknesses and that they're there. Yeah.
Totally true. And I know you back to the jiu-jitsu real quick. I know you were saying all these things kind of with the given that really the main thing to train is how much you know jiu-jitsu. That's really kind of the main thing.
That is the main thing.
Yeah, the number one thing. So that's all. It's like I said, a given, because the question is supplemental stuff for sure. So let's say all these little comparisons, like, the to me, aside from knowing jiu-jitsu, that's the main strength or whatever. If everyone's even, to me, the taller guy has the advantage. To me, that's the most effective advantage that I've seen.
It's interesting that you think that. Yeah. I don't think I necessarily agree with you. What a very tall, very lanky guy will have is a body type that you come across the least. So since you are coming across this body type the least,
you get the less training.
You have the least training against it. And since you have less training against it, you know how to react to it. And by the way, they constantly work on their strange body style because you are correct in the fact that the lanky body style gives you more moves, more unique moves than any other body style. So there's there's more unique moves that only are utilized or can be utilized by a tall, lanky person than there are than any other body style.
Right. And also, you can I'm not saying he's 7 feet tall. I'm saying like the whole 6'1" up to 6'5".
6'1" doesn't do it. To me, well, 6'1" can do it if the person's
that's like the beginning
of it. Yeah. But how tall? Like we have stilts appropriately named at the gym. And he's tall and like I think he's 6'5", but he has really developed the lanky guy style that people aren't used to. And it's a challenge for anybody.
Yeah, so Stilt's a good example where, in this case, where he's a little bit different because Stilt's has a lanky body style, but he's going pretty hard in that direction where he's actually practicing moves that only he can do kind of thing. So
that's exactly the point I'm making.
Right. So my point
whereas most normal body styles, everybody that's 5'3" to 6'0", they all have pretty much the same moves. Right.
Yeah, so what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about them. I think there's that, but those are the kind of the outliers that I think overall. I mean, everyone plays their strengths in one way or another, but I'm saying just all things being equal. So like, let's say all three Gracie brothers, Hodger Gracie, even these guys who are tall. These are like 6'3", 6'4", 5 type guys. We'll take Hodger, for example. He doesn't really do any kind of crazy, I am tall, so I can only do this. True. He doesn't do that. He does like, more, but his like just mount, for example, or his armbar setup from the bottom or from the bottom stuff is just way harder to deal with because he developed such a good base on top of the fact that physically he's made for such a good base, and here's the thing about tall guys in general, they're not limited to the moves they can do more or less all the moves. So like a guy who's 5'3", 250 or not 5'3", we'll say 5'3", 220,
but
he's gonna have a hard time.
Just say 5'8".
Sure, 230, whatever. We'll just say that's a stocky buff guy. He's going to have a hard time doing triangle chokes on guys his own size. In his weight division, he probably chances are him. Yeah, that's a triangle's a
major part of the game
move. Yes,
you can't do it.
Yeah, tall guys don't have that problem. They can do all the moves. They can do chokes, arm bars, whatever, and they can do it pretty easy. So like I said, that's why I think, and of course the flexible, tall, lanky guys, they do have that, but I think we all do. I think
do what?
Have like our body style will give us special moves only we can do.
Yeah,
even if you're short and stocky.
The list of moves, list of special moves that I can do with my body style is like 2.
Yeah.
And the list that Stilts can do with his body style is infinite.
Stilts has 2 things though. He has tall and lanky, and he has flexible. Okay,
yes.
so that's like he has double the thing. But I think the tall has the most in their bucket. I think
they definitely have the most options of moves that other humans can't do.
Yeah, but again, the main thing is to know.
The main thing is to know jiu-jitsu, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. That is the amazing thing.
I know, bro. Yeah.
And then the other part of this question was, what was the hardest stage of your jiu-jitsu journey?
Me, I would say the whole thing, just in completely different ways. Like the first part is like, dang, you get tired way too quick, and guys who are way smaller than you, way whatever than you are beating you up, and that kind of thing.
Beating you up with no factor whatsoever.
Yeah. And they're like teaching you, hey, this is what you did wrong, and you're sitting there all. But in my case, I was like 225 when I started, and I'm like sitting there, and this little guy, I don't know if you remember George, but he was a little purple belt that I was rolling with a lot. He taught me butterfly guard.
Oh, yeah.
He's teaching me stuff. I'm still sitting there with my big muscles, and he's like teaching me stuff. So that can be hard, I guess, and getting tired. But I think, and then you go up blue belt. in my particular experience, blue belt was the easiest, I think, because nothing really was expected of me.
Oh,
and
yeah. Blue belt's a good place to hide.
At the same time, in a way, some people it's the most frustrating.
Yeah.
But if you're like
right. Blue belt, you're good. You're a blue belt, so people know that you know jiu-jitsu a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're not expected to tap anybody.
No. Yeah.
And if you get tapped out by another blue belt, or a purple belt, or a brown belt, or a black belt, it's no big deal.
Yeah, you're a blue belt.
And even a white belt taps you, and you're like, yeah, that shouldn't have happened. But
yeah, I have so much to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that and you know how when you learn something from the point of not knowing anything, and then you start to learn, you learn the most quantity wise at the bottom when you start.
For sure.
So. And that's a philosophical way of putting. It's a specific way of putting it.
I don't know. I think there's some stages in the mid levels where your mind starts to fill up and you start to be able to really absorb stuff.
True.
Big giant things.
Right, but as far as jiu-jitsu, it's totally true, and that's what I mean by like that's a way of putting it, maybe philosophically.
Yeah.
Maybe, but it's because when you're. I mean, quantity-wise, meaning learning the moves in jiu-jitsu. Right. At like black belt, unless there's these weird special moves that are coming out or whatever, you know all the moves, you know all this stuff. It's about other stuff. You got to learn other stuff, timing, approaches, and all this more like interstitial stuff. But from a blue belt, you still like there's moves you just don't know as a blue belt. So, so you learn way quicker if you're interested. So you're like, oh, I have no answer to this guard pass. I have no answer. I'm a blue belt. Literally no answer to this guard pass. Someone can show you, oh, this is how you do it. You just block the wrist area, and you're like, oh, I automatically know. So you just learn more. So in my experience, so I didn't think blue belt was very frustrating at all, and I didn't spend much time at blue belt. And then when you hit purple belt, that's when the learning frustration hits because you're good enough, and you kind of have this weird confidence that's developed, and then you're doing so well against all these guys, and you just hit that one level up where you can't do nothing against nobody, and you're just there for a long time. Because it's almost like you got to switch over to learning different types of things now.
Yeah, you got to open your brain up, open your mind up, and open your game up. And you got to be vulnerable. You're not going to learn without making yourself vulnerable from time to time.
Yeah.
And, and again, there's a good parallel here with learning about leadership. I think it's the same thing. You come into a leadership position for the first time, and it doesn't take long before you're like, okay, I kind of got this. And that's like your blue belt phase where you start feeling like, and then the more people you get to command or the senior leadership positions you get put into or the harder situations you get put into, you realize that you got to continue to exercise your mind. You got to continue to grow. You got to continue to try and absorb new information and try new strategies and tactics and still stick with the fundamentals. Because that's one thing that, the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, they're fundamentally the same from white belt to black belt. And yet they change, and there's times you break those rules, and they're nuanced, and it's the same thing with being in a leadership position. The fundamentals don't change, but then how are those fundamental principles nuanced to handle these different situations? Yeah, that's very challenging.
Yep. Yeah, and then it's true. And brown belt to me is more the same as purple belt, but just more like refined. So it's like less of the frustration, but the frustration becomes like more concentrated.
You know what's crazy for me, and I don't know if this is just, when you remember back in the past, like you forget the bad stuff of the past.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Doesn't everyone do that?
Depends how bad, but yeah. I mean, I know
people
that.
Say, when we were in high school, everything was great, right? Or hey, when we went to college, everything was great. Or in the SEAL teams, we go, oh yeah, that deployment was great. We forget about all the hard stuff on a deployment, or any one that was bad, or whatever didn't work out the way we wanted it to. I don't know if it's that, but when I talk about the hardest stage of my jiu-jitsu journey, it's one big blur of fun. It's like there's nothing where I think back, wow, I was frustrated this time. No, man, I never had that feeling. I go home from the gym every time kind of like, good day of training, but that was fun. Yeah. That was cool that I learned this. Or, man, I can't believe I got caught by that guy. He's getting good, or whatever, You just kind of... I don't have like these hard stages to me. Yeah. Maybe I'm just a person that really enjoys it a lot, I guess.
Yeah, and I would say that that's most people. I
think so too.
I think I'm the same boat, and
But you use the term frustration a lot. And I've actually, I don't want to bring this out in the public audience, but I factually have seen you get frustrated from time to time.
Well, those are like
and you have a funny way of getting frustrated.
Whatever. Then I seen the same thing with you.
When?
Oh, you want me to say? Okay. One time you were rolling with Dean, and Dean had you. You know how like Dean will get ahead of you psychologically, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah," and he'll like be baiting you and laughing and stuff. And then the more he laughs, the less you laugh. So you're getting really mad. And I remember he was doing this thing where you guys stood up, and you were like. You were just tired of what's going on. You were tired of it, and you were turning up the heat. And Dean was just like, okay. And then he like, okay, this is what he did. He leaned against the wall, kind of like, oh, you can't take me down. I'm against the wall. And you engaged or whatever. You guys went down, and he got you. I think he got you with armbar. And I remember it was an armbar because I remember thinking, I don't think I've ever seen Jocko A get tapped out, B with an armbar. I can see like a foot lock, someone jumped in, but he got you with an armbar, and you were like, ah! You were frustrated.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, that was like what we could call a micro frustration. Overall, these are more like little challenges.
So that frustration, though, is it possible for it to be called frustration if it brings me joy? Is it possible? Because I even in the depths of like frustration, man, I feel good even getting tapped out.
Yeah, especially when you can reflect on it, and that's why I think you said. When you said you forget about the bad things, you forget about the bad things in a certain kind of discourse. If you regard that overall discourse as being a good thing, then you'll start to forget the bad thing, and vice versa.
But I never go home and say, like, oh man, I can't believe that I couldn't get out of there. I just couldn't do anything. At least I don't remember.
Yeah.
Man, I gotta have that feeling in there somewhere.
Yeah, it has to be. And really what they are just the challenges that are specific to certain stages. And these are real general things that probably apply to, to everybody in one way or another on the stages.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with leadership. Like most of the time, even though I've been in some situations where I was like, man, I didn't do a good job there. I could have done better. Normally I'm not frustrated, or I was working for somebody that wasn't letting me do what I wanted to do, and I had more maneuvering to do to get where I needed to be.
Yeah.
Didn't get frustrated. I enjoy that game. I enjoy that game.
Yeah. Micro frustrations.
Yeah.
They're like micro tears in your muscle. You feel them, but they're all for like benefit for overall muscle growth.
Stronger in the long run.
They're not injuries. Exactly.
Awesome.